Hey, this video is about your literary aspect, and this literary aspect is the motif of being haunted. That little kitty is just too darn cute. I had to include him, even though he doesn't make me very scared at all. Um, okay, the motif of being haunted. Let's take some notes. First of all, a motif is a symbolic image or idea that repeats throughout a book. That really is key that it repeats. It creates a pattern. And so we're going to see it in every single reading, and it's going to change. In some readings, it's going to take a certain form. Other readings, it'll take the same form, and then it'll change in another reading, and maybe it'll go back to how it was in a previous reading. And then probably the most critical is how it is in the very end of the book. Because all of those things, the way this motif changes, that's what will help us determine meaning. How the pattern repeats, progresses, regresses, is how the author is making a point about a larger meaning. Okay, so let's talk about how we would define this particular motif. Certainly any reference to ghosts, specters, or supernatural things is appropriate. Or anytime, also the wolf. So the wolf is referenced at first in the second chapter, Delil the wolf. And that will come up again, and that could certainly connect to this motif of being haunted. But similarly, you don't have to use every single one of these, okay? You can look for a connecting aspect of the motif of being haunted that you are interested in. And so you don't have to list every single one that you see, but rather the ones that you see that seem to connect to each other. Okay? So anytime a feeling of being haunted is created is up for grabs for this literary feature, as long as you can explain how the reader feels haunted by a particular symbolic image or idea. Okay? So it can't just be a description of one of the characters' deaths and say, well, that makes us feel haunted. That wouldn't quite work. Let me show you what would work from the first reading. Oh, I've got a definition here first for you. Forgot about this. Haunted just meaning inhabited or frequented by ghosts, or preoccupied as with an emotion, memory, or idea, obsessed. His haunted imagination gave him no peace is an example. The third possibility, disturbed, distressed, worried, haunted by doubt. All right, so just a kind of a reminder of what it means to be haunted. All right, let's look at some samples. These are from the first reading. And I think this is the very first example on page 1. Joshua insisted that there was a ghost in the house. And so the book begins in the prologue describing the New Orleans house that Jesmyn Ward's dad owned and that she frequented growing up when her parents were separated. And Josh is explaining that there was a ghost in that particular house and kind of scaring the other kids. And he does it more than once, or she has him do it more than once in the prologue. Here's another example. They gave the violence of New Orleans many names. We never saw any of that when we visited my father. But we listened to the chain link fence rattle in the industrial yard next to my father's house. And the night stretched on interminably. And I didn't say that quite right. And we listened to my brother tell us ghost stories. So the ghost stories are certainly a reference here to the motif of being haunted. But look up here as well. We have some audio imagery or sound imagery. We listened to the chain link fence rattle in the industrial yard. There is an example of the motif of being haunted. It makes us feel like we're being haunted by a ghost that is making rattling sounds, right? And so that audio imagery is a nice example, as well as the diction here in ghost stories. How about the next one? But my ghosts were once people, and I cannot forget that. So again, we have the ghost, the use of the word ghosts. I'm telling you, there's a ghost in here, Joshua said. That connects back to the first. The sun sets over the marsh grass and water, turning it into a tableau so gorgeous it haunts my homesick dreams. Here's an interesting use. It connects a little bit to this one here, my ghosts were once people, in that there is some positive and negative connotations or feelings created. So she is thinking about this place, this Delil, this home of hers, and it's so gorgeous it haunts her homesick dreams. So it's making her, the memory of the beautiful sunset is making her want to go back. And the way she describes it is as if it is ghostly. It's haunting her homesick dreams. And so there's a negative connotation there with haunting, but she's really talking about wanting to go back there. And so in that way, it's positive. So we have a kind of a duality. Whenever you find a duality, sorry about that. Whenever you find a duality or something that has a multiplicity of meaning, you're really going to want to look carefully at that, because that's where you know you have some rich ideas. If something can mean more than one thing in a book, that's where it's at, folks. That's what you need to look at carefully. All right. Oh, gosh, stop with the news already. I don't know why it's doing that. Let's see if I can advance slides a different way. Here we go. Okay, some more examples. Maman Vest told us stories of her dead husband, Adam Sr., who she said had visited her once after he died as she lay in her bed. Men's bodies litter my family history. The pain of the women they left behind pulls them from beyond, makes them appear as ghosts. In death, they transcend the circumstances of this place that I love and hate. All at once, it becomes supernatural. Okay, here we also have that duality, right? Love and hate. Sometimes when I think of all the men who've died early in my family over the generations, I think Delil is the wolf. So here we have the reference to Delil as wolf. Still, she felt the confines of gender in the rural South in the 70s stalking her. Felt that specter of Delil out in the darkness, the wolf cornering her in her mother's house, which had no heat in the winter, no air in the summer. So this is describing her mother growing up. And here we have a lot of references to that motif. Stalking, that word choice, specter. Specter is used figuratively to describe the town of Delil. And wolf cornering her in her mother's house. We certainly feel haunted or like we're going to be attacked in that example. How about we felt like death was stalking us, driving us from each other, the community falling apart. Here we have that word stalking again. So that's really interesting. The specter of the cousin or the uncle or aunt or the mother or father who couldn't stop partying, whose teeth are burned brown from the pipe. She sits next to them at the table. So we have the specter here. They killed my brother. They picking us off one by one. We waited as if we could. Will the hearse back to the house. Will Raj to rise out of the back alive. Will him to joke, to smile. So like I said before, you wouldn't have to use every single one of these, but every single one of these could be argued to be an example of the haunted motif. And now this connects to the other two where they are killing us one by one, right? I thought about what Tasha and Brandon had said, and those were quoted on the last page. And I wondered who they were. Were they even human? Suddenly they seemed as immense as the darkness, as deep as pressing. I turned off my music and rode home without the narrative of song, with only the bug's shrill cry and hot wind whipping past my window. I tried to hear the narrative in that, to figure out who the they that wrote our story might be. So here we have an image of some group, some plural pronoun, right? They, that is in control of who lives and who dies. And the other way that she uses that, the motif here, is to say that they're a writer of their story that they're living. And so we have a couple of different layers of figurative meaning here that are interesting. Anyway, these are all examples. They all work well. Let me move on to what some of the effects might be, okay? First of all, one effect of using this motif is that it creates a powerless feeling. The ones left behind have no control. They are being haunted. And not only by the ghosts of the memory of the dead, but then there's also this feeling of being picked off one by the Grim Reaper, or some entity that is stalking them, right, and creating the deaths. So that powerless feeling is really enhanced, I think, by the motif. It also enhances the unanswerable, mysterious nature of this epidemic. Why did these people die? Why did these men die young, violently? There aren't answers, just like the supernatural world has few answers. We don't know what it's going to be like to be dead because we can't come back, right? The third bullet point reminds the reader of the fear and trauma created in survivors. Just like being scared of a ghost, we are scared of the idea of our loved one dying, or it reminds us of that fear and trauma that we experienced when we found out they died, and the lasting fear and trauma that's created after they have left. Another effect, it emphasizes the contrasting feelings of love for the dead and the pain, fear about their death. I showed you some of that about that duality, that multiplicity, contrasting feelings in some of these examples. And then finally, it mirrors the repetitive nature of generational trauma. So the trauma that Ward and her family has suffered has gone on generation after generation after generation. And that's what we found in that second chapter about DeLille's long ago history up to 1977. And the idea of it being repetitive, I think, is connected to the idea of being haunted, because you never know when the haunting is going to return, right? Isn't that part of what is scary about ghosts and the supernatural, is that they could come back and come back and come back? And there's this recurrence in the book of, and from even before the book, of men dying young from violent means. And the haunting, I think, is a good way to mirror that repetitive nature, or that happening over and over and over kind of feeling. Oh my gosh. I think I have one more slide. Okay, it turned out I didn't have one more slide. Okay, that is it. And I'll make another video about the 3 themes. If you need to watch that, go ahead and watch that for the last part in your packet. But otherwise, you can just write about how you think this literary aspect connects to one of those 3 themes, and what you're starting to notice right now. All right, thanks so much for watching.